Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. It is just past midnight on Tuesday, August 20th. This is the news for Monday, August 19th, 2024, day 909 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. And David, you're still awake. You're still awake. Hey, Cheyenne. Hey, Daryl. Hey, Hobo, PT. Mario. Hey, Flip. What's going on, pal? Hey, PT. Dude, how are you still awake? Hey, super user. How could I be any better? Hey, Jerry O. Anthony Tommy Tom is here. Hey, Mad Mike. Hey, PH. Flip, I really had a very pleasant evening with you guys. It was really nice to meet you. Hey, Darlene. Hey, Mario. How could I be any better, huh, pal? Hey, Keith. So I'm on the phone. This is a true story. This is a true story. Are you ready for this? I'm on the phone with my buddy before, maybe about 15 minutes ago, and the air raid siren goes off, and he says, "Don't worry, Petey. It's just a couple Shaheeds. It's not a missile attack." And I went, "Oh, good." Now, what kind of a world are you living in when somebody can say to you, "Don't worry, it's just some Shaheeds. It's not a missile attack"? Hey, Joey the Lips. Hey, Bobby. Hey, Bjorn. Guys, thanks for the likes. Thanks for the gifts. I sure do appreciate it. It's nice to see everybody. Let's begin, of course. Today is day 14 of the Kursk invasion of Russia. Let's call it that. Hey, Trash Hunter. Hey, Sarah. Day 14. 2 weeks inside of Russia. And today, the Ukrainians pulled something off that the more that I learn about it, the more impressed I am, the more brilliant tactically it seems to be. The Ukrainians have cut the bridges over the same river, trapping about 2,700, reportedly, Russian troops, a mix of regulars and conscripts, south of the same river. What are they going to do? They're surrounded on 3 sides by Ukraine, and now the Ukrainians have entered Russia at the Tetkino border crossing. So now you've got the bulk of the Ukrainian army in Sudza to the east, and now you've got Ukrainians coming across the border in Tetkino to the west, and you've got no way to get across the river to your north. 2,700 Russians essentially stranded down there and surrounded on all sides by Ukrainians. They panicked so bad in Tetkino that the Russian forces reportedly just withdrew across the river and blew the bridges there themselves, ceding about 15 square kilometers to the initial force that came in. Hey, Nicola. Now, what are they going to do? Well, it is reported that there is a pontoon bridge. And so some of the troops south of the same may be able to escape across that pontoon bridge. But guess what? Their equipment's not going anywhere. All of their tanks, their APCs, their fuel trucks, their loaf vans, everything is going to have to stay behind. Oh, I'm sweating all right, Smarty. It was 93 in Kyiv today, and there's no air conditioning in this place. It's probably about 84 degrees in here right now. I don't know what that is Celsius, like 28? Ugh. And I'm fat and old, don't forget. All right, anyway. So, the brilliance of this move, not just to cut the Russians off from their supply lines and force their retreat. Because the more that I'm learning about this, the less likely it seems that the Ukrainians are even going to engage these 3,000. They can starve them out. You can't fight a battle without ammunition and food, and the supply lines are cut. And so it's entirely likely that the Russians may end up ceding the entire 700 square kilometers south of the Same to the Ukrainians, and leaving behind for them all their tanks and equipment, which would be quite a coup. Quite a coup. The mill bloggers, the Russian mill bloggers, are all crying for boats. They're looking for boats. They're trying to pull a Dunkirk to get the guys out of the danger that they are in. According to the Russian Emergency Committee, 121,000 people have been evacuated from the Kursk and Belgorod oblasts, and there are 220,000 under an evacuation order. According to Ukraine, they are now in control of 92 settlements and 1,550 square kilometers of Russian soil. In Glishkovo, where the first bridge was hit on Friday, video has emerged of Chechen Akhmat Brigade guys pilfering, looting a cell phone shop. Like, just unbelievable to me. The Ukrainian army is advancing on you from the east. The bridges, all of your escape has been blown, and you take a couple hours out of your day to go loot the iPhone store. It's unreal to me. In all the discussions that we've had about Kursk, we've talked about all the kind of goals that the Ukraine might have in this operation. Now, remember, we don't really know what their goals are. We're guessing. But one of the things that I didn't even think of, it took a number of different analysts to point this out to me, and the Kyiv Post I would point out as well. 1/3 of all drone strikes on Ukraine are launched from Kursk. If you look at the missile trajectories from the August 17th attack, every single one of the missiles that was fired at Ukraine, its trajectory was over Kursk. The border shelling of all those towns along Chernihiv, Sumy, etc., all of that is right, it's right there. They're getting pounded by the Russians from the other side. It's likely that one of the principal defensive goals, as Zelensky himself said, they're not interested in holding Russian territory. They're interested in protecting the lives of Ukrainians. And what better way to do that than to cut off the locale from which so many of these strikes are originated? And that appears to be a principal mission objective. And they are well on their way to it. Just like it's not likely that they're going to do too much engagement south of the Seine, they're just going to starve those guys out, force them to retreat. They may be doing something similar in Koronevo. It appears that Koronevo is now encircled, and the Ukrainians are just kind of bypassing the Russian force that's in the town, and they've just surrounded the town. Zelensky said, and this is a slight change from what he said before, that the primary task of the operation is to destroy as much Russian war potential as soon as possible and to conduct maximum counteroffensive operations, And all of that plays into the notion of a buffer zone that pushes the Russians back far enough that they can't shell into Ukraine, that they can't launch the missiles from there, they can't launch the drone strikes from there. And so it appears now Kyiv is saying that the mission objective is to create a buffer zone on the territory of the enemy. The ISW, citing a source in the Wall Street Journal, has said that Russia is moving from Donetsk several understrength brigades to the tune of 5,000 soldiers, including elements of the DPR and the 200th Motor Rifle Brigade. Now, here's the thing. They're moving you got 8,000 Ukrainians in Kursk or so. You're going to move 5,000 troops from Donetsk, from one of the hottest parts of the front line. You're going to move them hundreds of miles. There's no mobile reserve. Russia was not prepared for this at all. No, they weren't. Not only is there no mobile reserve that could go in and respond, but they're going to have to move these 5,000 guys from hundreds and hundreds of miles away. And those force concentrations, those trains and troops and convoys, they're going to be exposed. They're going to be exposed to Ukrainian armaments at multiple locations along that drive. It is not going to be a picnic getting there. That's for sure. And it's important to remember that the Russians were fucking cheating. They were cheating. The armies in Ukraine, they don't have anybody to defend the border. So what do? They put a bunch of kids in uniforms, give them a rifle, and tell them to sit there. That's it. That's who was there. A bunch of 19 to 22-year-old kids with no combat experience or training. Now, that's clearly going to change now. And it's changed already. Some forces have arrived because there are pitched battles ongoing all the way from the southeast of Sudza up to Koronevo. It's a hot front line. So somebody is there. Somebody's got there. It is not the company commander of the 810th Marine Brigade, because he's now a POW. And there was a nice video of him asking the Russian high command to trade him back for some of the Azov Steel guys. So the Azov guys may just be coming home thanks to this incursion. In typical fashion, the Kremlin is punishing anybody who, and I swear to God, these bastards, they are so anxious for their people to be completely dependent on them. Remember the evacuees from Kursk and Belgorod were supposed to get $114 each evacuation compensation? Well, you're getting your $114 if you were evacuated by the state. But if you showed personal initiative, God forbid you owned your own car and you got in it and drove away, well, you don't need the state, so you must not need our money, and you're not getting the $114 in evacuation reimbursement expenses. Unbelievable. They must really be out of money. I'll tell you, I had some troll on my page talking shit, and I laughed at him and I said, tell me something, how much do the Russians owe you? Really, honestly. Because you know you ain't getting paid. There's no money left for you. You'll never get paid. How far behind are they on their payments to you? I did not hear another comment from that fucking guy. Oh, God. It's funny. I do want to talk about Russian disinformation for a second here, because I think that this is important. What we're seeing in the Russian disinformation space is a false equivalency. They're talking about how the Kursk offensive is dumb, it's a waste of resources, because all the while that you're busy in Kursk, Ukraine, Russia is taking Prokofsk. Russia is advancing in the Donbass. This is a false equivalency of the worst sort. One cannot compare the tiny incremental tactical advances that the Russians have made toward Kursk to this expansive maneuver warfare, combined arms invasion of the enemy's territory and the seizure of his lands. There's no comparison. 1,500 square kilometers? The Russians added maybe 15 square kilometers over 2 weeks, and it cost them company after company of men. What's happening in Kursk is not the same. It's large-scale maneuver warfare that's making real advances over a kilometer a day in every direction. So when you see this false equivalency in the Russian disinformation space, call it out, people. It's bullshit. Bullshit. On the subject of the difference in the invasions, has everybody noticed that the Russian people have not come out to fight the Ukrainians? When the Russians invaded Ukraine, the population was mobilized. Everybody volunteered. Everybody who could sew a net, everybody who could dig a trench, everybody who could make a Molotov cocktail was out there in the streets combating the Russians. Average every day. A woman I know from Mary Kay, was digging trenches and guarding facilities with a rifle for the first time in her life. The population stood up. This population isn't standing up. 500 years of Russian empire and the evil of the Soviet experiment has left a population bereft of individual initiative. It does not exist the way that it does in the West or in Ukraine. Folks either fled or they have been docile with the invaders, with the occupying Ukrainians. And for fucking the Kremlin's part of things, 14 days into the invasion, no real response, no real plan for dealing with it, no seeming impetus to move troops from the front line en masse to deal with this incursion. Instead, Putin is in Azerbaijan. Peskov is on vacation. And Medvedev hasn't posted to his Telegram channel in 10 days. 10 days. The best story I thought to come out of the Kursk invasion so far today was the story of some Ukrainian soldiers who, at a local law enforcement or FSB office maybe, found all this paperwork and warrants for the arrests of draft dodgers. These were Russians who were supposed to be conscripted and they ran away or hid or tried to bribe somebody or whatever. The Ukrainians destroyed it all. So there is no tracking these Russian draft dodgers anymore, which I thought was a kind of a thing of beauty. Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister Havrlak told Forbes that Russian plans to double the troops in Ukraine to 800,000 by 2025. Okay, that might be their plan, but they are only recruiting by their own numbers 360,000 a year. Where are these 800,000 going to come from when today, hey, Daniel Ballard, when today Russia hit the milestone of 600,000 casualties from this war? That's KIA plus WIA, off the battlefield. Now, if about a quarter of those casualties are KIA, that's 150,000. That's the entire original invasion force. You're talking numbers like we've never seen in the West since World War II. That's like 3 Vietnams. That's everybody we lost in Korea, Vietnam, 20 years in Afghanistan, plus 20 years in Iraq. Oh, and everybody in Kosovo, too. It's flabbergasting. It is such a casual, selfish disregard for the value of the lives of your fellow human beings. It does not even fit in our comprehension. It is pure evil, this attritional nightmare to assuage the ego of a megalomaniac genocidal lunatic in the Kremlin who is leading the population of Russia to its end. That's like lemmings over a cliff. You're following this guy. It's insanity. So interesting video came out of Kadyrov, the Chechen leader, driving around a brand new Tesla Cybertruck with a 50 caliber machine gun mounted on the back. I mean, I don't know. Does it have a sunroof? How do you fire that thing? I don't know. But anyway, Kadyrov got this Tesla Cybertruck, and he made a video thanking Elon Musk for sending it to him. Which is not doing Musk any favors. Musk, of course, is denying the whole thing. He actually said to the reporter that asked him if it was true, Musk, in typical Musk fashion, said, "Are you an idiot? Do you think that I would send a Cybertruck to Ramzan Kadyrov? You're out of your mind." I think that's pretty much a direct quote from Musk on the question of did he do it. So, of course, he did it. You know he did, right? Like that piece of shit. You just know he sent it to him. The worst part of that is, it's going to end up in Ukraine. Kadyrov said as much. He was sending the vehicle to Ukraine to unalive Ukrainians. So if Musk did send it to him, it's just another nail in the traitor's coffin as far as I'm concerned. The Trans-Siberian Railway had an electrical substation blow up. Now, this is way the fuck out there, like 5 time zones east of Moscow. So it's not there's no indication that it's a Ukrainian strike. It's more likely either a lack of maintenance, failure of the infrastructure, which we see more and more of, or it's partisan activity. We don't know, but it is a critical line of the Trans-Siberian Railway that moves arms and ammunition from North Korea to the Ukrainian front line. And just over the weekend, we had a North Korean missile barrage here in Kyiv. I think it was 4 KN-2324s that left some big holes where they came down. Out in Bashkortostan, again, too far away for this to be a drone strike. There's a chemical plant on fire right now. It's likely that it was partisan activity, but we don't yet know that for sure. There's a lot of scuttlebutt in the press about everybody's given up on funding Ukraine. This is nonsense. The big story that's getting attention is Germany, and that the story is German aid is going to be cut in half next year. Something like that. This is nonsense. We went through this whole thing last year at this time. It's all the German budget cycle is all it is. Until that budget is done in November, we don't know what Ukraine aid from Germany is going to look like. And so those guys have some internal conversations to have. But Germany has come out and said, this is nonsense. We're not abandoning our ally. We're not going to leave Ukraine in the lurch, Denmark announced new aid of 104 million euros for the purchase of domestically produced Ukrainian weapons for Ukraine. So moving the domestic defense industry along. Residents of Kursk have been told they have a week or two to evacuate. The Russians are moving on Pokrovsk. They're moving slowly. The last 5 kilometers took them 2 weeks, but that pace may be accelerating. So at the current pace, the Russians would be in Pokrovsk in about 6 weeks. If it accelerates, 3 weeks, pardon me, 3 weeks. If it accelerates, it could be 2. So the officials are telling everybody about 53,000 people to get out now. And about 500 to 600 people a day are leaving. The forced evacuation of children begins tomorrow. And so officials in Pokrovsk are taking the approaching Russian army very seriously, and people are moving out, which is a shame because Pokrovsk was a real win story, right? Initially on the front lines, it had basically been abandoned, but when the front lines stabilized to the east, people returned home. Kids went back to school. Kids were playing in the street again. And now they're on the run. 53,000 people. Joe Blogs. If you don't follow Joe Blogs, if you're an economist or you're interested in economics, Joe Blogs is a great source for what's happening in the world over on the TubeUs there. And he did a beautiful breakdown of the $125 billion Russian oil and gas disaster. Russia is facing a shortfall in its sale of oil and refined oil products and LNG, natural gas, of $125 billion. That's about 40% off of the pre-war income. Huge. Modi to visit Ukraine for the first time. I'm not a big fan. It seems to me he's going to be coming here telling the Ukrainians to capitulate. And I think that's a bad idea. A couple days ago in Rostov, the Kavka oil storage was hit by a drone. Firemen were summoned to the fire. They battled the blaze for 24 hours. And then everything went kaboom today. 13 firefighters are injured. It appears now that the fire is raging completely out of control. There are 74 storage containers there. Each can take 5 metric tons of diesel. And it looks like it's all, that's 360 metric tons of diesel. All of it earmarked for the Russian army, for tanks, for trucks, for low fans, etc., right? And it is burning out of control, and it appears that the entire facility is going to burn to the ground. Orban has opened a back door for Russians to get into the EU. He has added Belarusians and Russians to the National Card Program, which allows you to come into the country on a work visa and stay for up to 2 years. Now, the problem with that is once you're in Hungary, you're in the EU, and so then your travel is not monitored. That means that thugs and criminals and arsonists and saboteurs from Russia can get into the EU via Hungary and then go wherever they want to cause the mayhem that they've been paid to cause. The EU is looking at this with great skepticism and is looking to impose new restrictions on Russians crossing out of Hungary and into the EU. So we'll see how that goes. This little stunt of Orban's could well set Hungary on a path toward being excommunicated, thrown out of the EU. Lukashenko has done a 180, right? He's been screaming about the Ukrainian threat. And now he's saying that there is no threat and he can pull his troops from the border. I don't know. I think this guy might have had a stroke. I don't know. Finally, last thought tonight from the headlines. I just want to congratulate, guys, the Kyiv Post is an English language newspaper here in Kyiv. I use them constantly as a reference. You hear me refer to Kyiv Post in many videos and lives. And they just hit 100,000 subscribers on YouTube. And I think that deserves a congratulation and acknowledgement, and my personal gratitude for all the great journalism that they provide us with. So congratulations to the Kyiv Post. Now, for my part, so that's the top line from the news. We'll go to Q&A next. But just before we do, I want to thank Blue Ariel Silk, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. Blue Ariel Silk joined the Patreon at a level that gets her live sponsorship once a month. And so to Blue Ariel Silk, who does a lot of good work on behalf of Ukraine, I want to say thank you. Thanks for your support of the channel. Thanks for all you do for Ukraine. And I'm glad you're here tonight. Right? Good timing, pal. Good timing. Okay. Also, I want to thank the moderator team, of course. Best moderator team on the Tickety Talk. Shanetta. I did it again. Cheyenne, Vanetta, PT, John Williams, Jay, and Travis. Hey, Kaz. I want to thank Nightshade, who has the Peter's Peeps public group over on the Book of Faces. I want to thank Vanetta Larrett, who has our Google Doc share, where you can get email message templates to Congress, the Senate, and the White House on things like unleash ATACMS, untie the Ukrainians' hands. Come on. This is ridiculous. What world are we living in where Russia can do as it pleases? And we put these kinds of restrictions on our allies that are fighting for their lives. Make your voice heard to your Congress people and representatives. And as always, thanks to Lars, who has the Discord server and the Alexievich archive. Thanks, Lars, for all you do. Okay, so my friends, ladies and gentlemen, and other non-binary folks, I am Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5 from Kyiv. So, questions, comments. One of the pontoon bridges in Kursk is blown up already, so they're not going to let them leave, Trash Hunter. Is that it? Interesting. That was pointed out. Somebody pointed that out, that these pontoon bridges are going to be easy targets. And I thought, why would you hit them? They're inefficient. You can't move any heavy equipment over them. If some of these guys want to clear out of there, it should only make the progress of your army a lot easier. But maybe they know who's there and they expect them to capitulate. I don't know. Bip. There's somebody here named Bip. Bip, Bap, Boop. They captured a friend from Kadyrov I saw in a video. They captured more than one Kadyrovite. There were at least 3 in the 102 that were captured in Sudza. And then there was another group of Chechens that was captured as well as some that were not taken alive. So they are there. The Akhmat Brigade is there. And we actually saw a video of them looting a cell phone store today in Glushkova, where the first bridge got knocked down on Friday. 3 bridges down, Darlene. It's actually 5, because there's the 3 bridges that the Ukrainians took out on the same river, and then on the far west edge in Totkino, the Russians blew 2 bridges after they retreated and ceded the territory to the invading Ukrainian forces who came across the border at Tetkino. Yeah, I did see something, Nicola, about a volcano going off in Russia following an earthquake there, but I don't have any details on that. Oh, he's believed to be a good friend of Kadyrov himself. Oh, interesting flip. I didn't know about that. Jake Furs, I heard a hacker group in coordination with UA and oh, that's a sidebar. I read that Ukraine used a glide bomb to bring a Kursk bridge down. Poetic justice. I don't know what they used to bring them down, Bobby. I don't know the answer to that. Have we seen any North Koreans fighting or captured? No, Clay. We have not. The threat of North Korean engineers in Ukraine has never materialized. So that has not happened to the best of my knowledge. We have seen Korean ballistic missiles and Korean shells, but no Koreans. Will the Kadyrov that were captured get special treatment back in Kyiv? No, I don't think so. I don't think they're important. Thanks, Dive Hard. You always make me feel pretty. I don't think they're that important. I mean, they're just murderous thugs, right? That's all they are. Thank you, Marilyn. They're just murderous thugs. I mean, oh, Meerkat. I love meerkats. The thing about the Chechens is they weren't in Ukraine fighting Ukrainians. They were in Ukraine as barrier troops to enforce discipline. So if anybody tried to retreat, they would take them out. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. It's hardly fighting. Hey, Big Hawk. Kim Jong-un came out on the side of Russia in the Kursk incursion, issuing an empty proclamation. You know, Dark Irish, dude, it's like you read my mind. I was just about to say that. Fitz says, what happened to Putin's NATO? No one wants to help him. Exactly, dude. That's what I was just going to say. Where the fuck is the CSTO? Right? Now, Armenia's leaving, so we don't count on anything from them. Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. It was a Tajik. No, I'm sorry. Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan have all left the CSTO already. So they're off the hook. But there's still Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and one other. I'm sorry, Kyrgyzstan. Georgia left the CSTO. My apologies. Georgia left the CSTO. Uzbekistan left the CSTO. And then Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan are still in. Why aren't they sending troops? Why aren't they sending their men to die for Putin? I'll never forget at the Russia conference about a year ago, the Kazakhs were hosting, and the president of Kazakhstan started his speech in Kazakh. Watching all those Russians scramble for their translation headphones was one of the funniest moments of this war. There are Russians still living in the captured areas, Clay, and we've seen a video of them shopping unmolested. We've seen videos of Ukrainian forces bringing them food, medical supplies, wellness visits, if you will. We've seen Ukrainian security forces stop Russian women with shopping carts because they've been looting their neighbors' homes. That's a thing in Russia. Your neighbors are out of town. There's an invading force. Well, let's loot the neighbors' homes. Ukraine is definitely taking this opportunity to move ahead. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Yep, it's the first day back home in the United States, the first day of the Democratic National Convention. I certainly wish them good luck. Let's hope it's not like the last time they had it in Chicago. Guys, the chat moves pretty fast, so if I missed your question, please chat it back in. Who is winning the war? Nobody. Nobody's winning. Everybody's losing in this war. The question is, who's going to lose the least? And that's going to be Ukraine. First of all, Russia had more to lose, and they're losing it. They've lost it. This bullshit with sending 5,000 troops to Kursk, it is not enough. It is not enough. The Ukrainians are going to be there a long fucking time if that's the only response they get. Yeah, the arms manufacturers aren't winning that much, Big Hawk, because the big demand is for 155 millimeter shells, and there's a price cap, at least in the United States, on how much they can charge for them in a time of war. And so, you know, they're not winning as much as you think they are. It's, you know, it's not like a contract to R&D a new bomber. That's where the money's at. Are they using the F-16 efficiently to attack Russian troops? I don't know that they're using the F-16 at all. I don't have any evidence of that. It's Su-27s doing the glide bomb runs at the Russians in Kursk. Su-27s, by all accounts. Now, could there be operational security that's hiding that fact from us? Yes, of course. But to the best of my knowledge, we have no evidence of the F-16s. You remind me of Orson Wells. Well, that is a great compliment. Thank you. Orson Wells tells a great story. He's vacationing on the French Riviera for work. He's trying to get some money out of a Russian oligarch. A white Russian, not a red Russian, is how he described him. Right, meaning a capitalist Russian. He's trying to get some money, and he claims this is a true story. He's there with his guy he's going to pitch, and he's going to try to get to fund a film. And it happens that Winston Churchill is staying at the same spa hotel. And he's going to meet the Russian for lunch, and as he passes Churchill's table, Churchill gives him a respectful nod. When he gets to the table, the Russian is flabbergasted. Did Churchill just say hello to you? Yes. Well, that was it. The money was all done. He got all the money he wanted, blah, blah, blah. So impressed was the Russian by Churchill's acknowledgement, right? The next day, Wells finds himself out swimming there in the Mediterranean on the French Riviera. And he finds himself paddling somewhere near Churchill. And he says, hey, Mr. Churchill, I just wanted to let you know you got my movie funded. And just from that little nod, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. The next day, he goes into lunch at the hotel to meet the Russian again. And this time, Churchill stands up and bows to Wells. Apparently, Orson never had to ask anybody for money for a movie ever again. Thanks, Ange. Have there been issues reported outside of the DNC at the United Center? I have no idea. This channel is a Ukrainian channel. If I happen to know something that's going on and somebody has a question, I'll answer it, but I'm not tracking any of that. Tell my joke. So Travis chatted me up before. I can't see it. Let me see if I can remember it. So the Russians have, Travis chatted this to me. So the Russians have blown the bridges in Kursk. I guess it's just the same as it ever was, with same spelled the way that you spell the river. Same as it ever was, same as it ever was. And I thought that was funny. Any news on the Czech shell initiative? Jake, the Czechs have promised to deliver 50,000 shells a month, every month. And to the best of my knowledge, that happened in July. It happened in August. The next shipment is due in September. So on the regular now, the shells are coming in. Speaking of Russians on vacation, where's Peskov? I was just in Vegas and there was so much Russian being spoken. Yeah, you can be sure of that. Yeah. Peter, do you know, is Ukraine blowing bridges in front of them or behind them? Neither, Zuli. They're not blowing the bridges in front of them or behind them. They are blowing the bridges that are between the eastern Ukrainian army in Sudza and the western Ukrainian army in Tatkino. And they're blowing all the bridges in between to trap about 3,000 Russian soldiers in the area beneath that river. And they have trapped them. They are now caught in a pincer move with the Ukrainian army advancing on them from either side and nowhere to escape to. I mean, you know, they could swim the river. Maybe they could steal a boat. But that means they have to leave all their equipment behind. The Ukrainians are getting a bunch of tanks out of this. A bunch of APCs, a bunch of other equipment. So they are, the Russians are blowing the bridges behind them. The Russians in Tetkino are in full retreat. They blew the two bridges behind them in the hopes of stopping the Ukrainians on the wrong side. But that's not going to work. Good night, Ange. Hey, Eli. I'm glad Blue Ariel Silk, the sponsor of tonight's live, was here tonight. That's always nice. Effin Hell missed his last week. All right, we got 13 minutes. Hi to all the latecomers. Do you have a note from your mom on why you are late? David Frazier. Where is Peskov, Lavrov, and Putin? Well, Putin is in Azerbaijan. Peskov is on vacation. And Lavrov said quite amusingly to me that after this Kursk invasion, there will never be negotiations with Ukraine. He's a child. They're such children, these people. Why stop the offensive here, Zelensky? Because this is Alaska. Did you see the video of the goats? Stop. Let's just hope it was for food. Let's just hope it was for food. Sharon, don't answer him. Don't answer David Frazier. You don't owe him any explanations. Joey Contino believes that the Donbass retreat could be a trap for Russian troops. Bobby, it's exactly the same trap that it's always been. It's the same trap that it was in Avdiivka. It's the same trap that it was in Bakhmut. You fix the enemy in place so they can't go anywhere else, and then you attrit them. You make them pay for every centimeter of ground. Ooh, centimeter, I sound European. For every inch of ground, you make them pay, and God knows they're paying. Liberate the goats. I like goat. I've raised goats. Goats are great animals to raise. If you've never raised goats, I highly recommend it. Do not let them in your house under any circumstances. Is it really cold enough to have a fire in England tonight? Holy shit, Anthony. They seem a little jerkish. Goats? Yeah, you're not wrong. A young Billy especially can be pushy, literally. But no, they're great animals to raise. They're great animals to raise, especially if you have property where you need to control the vegetation on that property, especially if you're in a place that's infested with multiflora rose, which is very common in the northeast part of the United States. They eat the shit out of that stuff. Flooding in Vienna yesterday. I didn't see anything about that. I just know today here in Kyiv, I want to say it was 34. That's 96 Fahrenheit, something like that. I swear to God, it's 84 degrees in this kitchen right now. I don't have any air conditioning. You have 3 goats who were fussy eaters? I don't understand that. Well, they don't eat everything and anything, right? They're not grazers, they're foragers. So they will not keep your lawn down. You need sheep for that. 1,000-year flood in Connecticut. Now, you understand when I say they're good to raise, I don't mean like as pets. I mean for food and milk. Bip, come to Ukraine, man, after this is all over. That's definitely... that's definitely my suggestion. Russian astronaut being ordered to fight. Where? In Ukraine? An astronaut? Oh my God. Probably a pilot. They wanted to fly. How far behind do you think the updates are? 2 or 3 days? You're talking about coming out of Kursk? It depends. Because the Russian mill bloggers aren't under the same operational security as the Ukrainians are. So when the bridges got blown in Kursk, it seems to me that was real-time posting by the Russian mill bloggers. And then, of course, the Ukrainians just have to acknowledge it because it's already out in the ether. So, Big Red, that is a tough question. How far behind are the updates? Because certainly some things are being kept from us. Absolutely they are. As well, they should be. Interesting development today. A lot of people are talking about, it looks like maybe Sersky is using the natural boundaries of the rivers in the area to define his space. It may not be so much about drawing a straight line across those comma-shaped areas into Ukraine, but rather taking everything that's inside those rivers and using the rivers to protect the flanks. Pretty smart if that's what's going on. Flooding in NYC as well. So Jeff, up in the Northwest, you have knapweed, which is an invasive plant that nothing eats, right? And in the Northeast, we have multiflora rose, same thing. And the goats love it. Holy cow, dude, my goats, I used to watch them because it was so fascinating. Multiflora rose has these thick spikes on it, right? This is how the goats dealt with that. Their tongues would come out, wrap around the thorn bush, rip the thorns off, and they would eat the thorns first, which are very high in nutrients, apparently, especially when they're young. Yeah, I love curry goat too. It's a pretty substantial river, dark Irish. I don't know if it's a half a mile cross, but it's more than 3/10, I bet. And of course, that varies depending on where you're talking about the river. I'm thinking of the crossing at Glukovo, which was where the first bridge was blown. Protesters are pulling the fences down at the United Center in Chicago. Oh my God. It's probably these pro-Palestinian people, is it? Hey, Mel. Kudzo in the South. That's another one, PT, yep. Hey, Maddie, right? 10 inches of rain in 24 hours. That's a lot of rain. Did you start working on your ark? You're going to put a couple goats in there. Goat's milk is great, Bobby. Goat's milk is great. And I am a big fan of the Chev, the goat's milk cheese. It's really excellent. Hey, Chris Carter. Hey, Walter Williamson. They love everything with thorns. They really do. Ah, thanks, Big Red. Okay. Give the people what they want, David. Give the people what they want, pal. Have you tried brown goat cheese? I don't know what you mean by that, Lars. I never saw anything but a white goat cheese. I would think brown would have to come from some additive. Dollars? I don't get that, David. Goat meat is tasty. I'm with you, Bobby. I like a goat. Good night. Give the people what they want, dollars. Yeah, you're not wrong. No, I haven't had that, but I would eat that. I would eat that in a sec. Oh, I would eat that with apples. Apple slices. Pear, maybe. Yeah, Bip, now I'm not a military expert, but all the military experts say you can't use A-10s unless you have air superiority. And the Ukrainians don't have air superiority. Without air superiority, the A-10s are sitting ducks. Could it be Ukraine is drawing Russians in, specifically in Donetsk? Yes, Big Red. Just like they did in Avdiivka, just like they did in Bakhmut. Absolutely. And I'm increasingly convinced that Kursk is important, don't get me wrong. But it's just the first move. Once something is coming. Now, when it's going to come is another question. We are 2 months out from the mud season, after which no one will be able to move until everything freezes, which will be another 3 months after that. So the next 60 days are critical. It's going to define where this war goes into the winter. And the options will be very limited then. So it occurs to me that we could well see Ukraine take about another 2 weeks to establish themselves in Kursk, define the boundaries of where they want to be, and then see the real action happen. Somewhere completely different, maybe Zaporizhia. Maybe a push to cut the land bridge down to Melitopol. Or something like that. Stay tuned because shit is happening. What am I doing after the war? I got to get through the war first, John Murray. But the first plan that I have for after the war is a picnic on a beach in Crimea. You all are invited. Night, David. Oh, yeah, no, it'll be all new material tomorrow. Do you know if Ukraine will go for Putin? If they have the chance, sure. Russia doesn't seem to have many drones in Kursk, right? No, Bobby, I don't know the answer to that. They certainly have drones in Kursk, but how many? I don't know the answer to that. Good night, Maddie Wright. Ah, Samso, yes, hell yeah, pal. I do not intend to leave this country before the Russians do. And I do not intend to leave this country until I have had a pig roast or maybe a goat roast on the beach in Crimea. And so, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else, anybody that's interested, maybe, we'll have to see how long it takes to get those beaches safe or to find a safe beach. But I would think within a few months of the armistice, we'll be down there. I'm thinking a whole goat, rotisserie roasted over an open fire. All right, guys, it is past the top of the hour. So again, let me thank Blue Ariel Silk, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. Let me thank the moderator team, the best moderator team on the Tickety Talk, Cheyenne, Vanetta, PT, John Williams, J, and Travis. Let me also thank Nightshade, who has the Peters Peeps public group. All of my lives are reposted within 24 hours to that Facebook page. So if you like the live and you miss it, you can always find it on Facebook. I want to thank Vanetta, who has the Google Docs share and the Dismantle Project 2025 group on Facebook. And of course, thanks to Lars, who has the Discord server and the Alexievich archive. Thank you all very much. Trav, are you talking to me? Best TikToker? You got to be kidding. Everything I learned from you. All right. So everybody, thanks so much for being there for me. Because you're there for me, I can be here for you. And it's a great pleasure and privilege. Hey, Jacob Grady, good night. Make it a great day, everybody.